Hello, today you're going to watch lessons 1.5 and 1.6 combined into the same lesson. Adding, subtracting, multiplying, and dividing real numbers. So let's get started. First we're going to talk about absolute value. The absolute value of a number is its distance away from 0 on the number line. Whether it's -4 or +4, if you take the absolute value of it, it is still 4 units away from 0. We use solid bars to represent absolute value. One thing I also want you to remember is that absolute value bars are another type of grouping symbol, just like parentheses or brackets. We always work inside them first before performing any other operations. So, right here, I have 9 minus 16. So, I do 9 minus 16 first because it's in the parentheses. So 9 minus 16 is -7. So now I have to take the absolute value of -7. Remember, absolute value is always positive, whether it's you're taking the absolute value of a negative number or a positive number. So the absolute value of -7 is +7. 17 minus 20 equals -8. So I take the absolute value of -8, and that is +8. Next, let's review some properties that are discussed. So the identity property of addition we learned before, and that's any number added to 0 is going to equal itself. More importantly, though, is the inverse property of addition, which states that for every real number n, there's an additive inverse opposite of n, such that the sum of them equals 0. For example, 17 plus -17 equals 0. When two integers are added and the sum is 0, the two numbers are additive inverses. 5 and -5. -13 and 13. Those are additive inverses because if we added them together, they would equal 0. So now we're going to talk about adding with the same sign. To add two numbers with the same sign, add their absolute values. The sum has the same sign as the add-ins. Another way to think about it is add the two numbers and then keep the same sign. So, for example, +2 plus +6 equals +8. -2 plus -6, well, it's a negative plus a negative, meaning you're adding on more negatives. So, since 2 plus 6 is 8, but both signs are negative, it's going to be -8. So down here, I have -3 plus -4. Well, 3 plus 4 is 7. And since both the signs are negative, put a negative in front of it, and it equals -7. Adding numbers with different signs can be a little bit more tricky. To add two numbers with different signs, find the difference of their absolute value. The sum has a sign as the add-in with the greater absolute value. In simpler terms, whichever number has a larger absolute value, either -13 or +8, that's the sign that the answer is going to be. So since -13 has a larger absolute value than +8, my answer is going to be negative. Then, we find the difference, so I have to do 13 minus 8. I'm going to take the smaller absolute value, which is 8, subtract it from 13, and I'm going to get 5. So -13 plus 8 equals -5. So try a few on your own. So -12 plus -17. Since both the numbers are negative, my answer is going to be negative because I'm adding two integers with the same sign. I'm going to do 12 plus 17, -29. -3.4 plus 4.7, they have two different signs, so let's take the absolute value of both of them, and I see that 4.7 has a higher absolute value, so I know it's going to be a positive number. And I do 4.7 minus 3.4. I get 1.3. So my answer is going to be 1.3. 23 plus -15. Again, I take the absolute value of both of them, and I notice that +23 has a larger absolute value. So I know my answer is going to be positive. And I do 23 minus 15. And I get 8. So the answer is going to be 8. And finally, I have 4.2 plus 6.5. take the absolute value of both of them, and I see that negative 6.5 has a higher absolute value, so since it's a negative number, my answer is going to be negative. And then I do 6.5 minus 4.2, and I get 2.3. So my answer is going to be negative 2.3. Again, because negative 6.5 has a larger absolute value than 4.2. Subtracting numbers. To subtract a number, add its opposite. This is where we use keep, flip, change, if you've learned that before. Where you keep the first number in the problem, flip the sign, and change the second number. So for example, 3 minus 5, I'm going to keep 3, flip the minus to a plus, and change 5 to negative 5. Then you can do the same process that we did. Do the absolute value, subtract the lesser from the greater, and then keep the sign of the number with the largest absolute value. So try a few on your own. So 12 minus 17, if I do keep, flip, change, that's 12 plus negative 17. I know negative 17 has a larger absolute value, so my answer is going to be negative. And then 17 minus 12 equals 5, so my answer is negative 5. Negative 3.1 minus 1.9. I can do keep, flip, change. I get negative 3.1, I keep, I flip the sign from minus to plus, and I change 1.9 to negative 1.9. And now look, I have two numbers that are both negative, so I'm adding them together and keeping the sign. So I do 3.1, negative 3.1 plus negative 1.9, that's going to give me negative 5.0. Negative 24 minus negative 18, keep, flip, change. I keep negative 24, I flip this minus sign to a plus sign, and then I change negative 18 to positive 18. So now I have negative 24 plus 18, and I see that negative 24 is a larger absolute value, so my answer is going to be negative. And then I do 24 minus 18, and that equals 6, so my answer is negative 6. 4.9 minus negative 2.6, keep, flip, change. So 4.9 plus 2.6 is 7.5. Now, multiplying. When we multiply two real numbers, these are rules that you have learned hopefully in the past, but if not, you should learn them now. When multiplying two numbers with the same sign, the product will always be positive. Whether it's a negative times a negative or a positive times a positive, the answer will always be positive. If the signs are different, the answer will always be negative. A negative times a positive is a negative, and a positive times a negative is a negative. So I have 4 problems right here. Take a moment and try them on your own. Eight times negative 4 is negative 32 because it's positive times a negative. Next, I have negative 9.2 times negative 6, so since it's a negative times a negative, it's going to be positive, and that's positive 55.2. 7 times negative 2/3, my answer is going to be negative, and so since it's a whole number, 7, remember you can write any whole number over 1. 7 times negative 2 is negative 14, and 1 times 3 is 3. So I get negative 14/3, or if you want, you can write that as negative 4 and 2/3. Finally, I have 2/5 times negative 3/4. It's going to be a negative because it's a positive number times a negative number. I get negative 6 over 20, and that reduces to negative 3 over 10. Dividing two integers. The same rule as when you're multiplying. The two integers or numbers that have the same sign, the answer will be positive. The two integers or numbers have different signs, They will both be negative. So here are 4 problems that I want you to try on your own. Take a minute and do these in your notebook. So negative 121 divided by 11. It's a negative divided by a positive, so my answer is going to be negative. And the answer is negative 11. Negative 3.9 divided by negative 1.3. It's a negative divided by negative, so it's going to be positive 3. 84 divided by negative 7. It's a positive divided by negative, so it's going to be negative 12. And finally, I have negative 12.6 divided by negative 0.9. And since that's a negative divided by negative, it's going to be a positive 14. Inverse property of multiplication. For every a, when a is not equal to 0, there's a multiplicative inverse 1 over a, such that the original number a times its reciprocal 1 over a equals 1. So the reciprocal of a is 1 over a, meaning if you have any number, let's say 5, the reciprocal is just the number flipped, 1/5. If I have 2/3, the reciprocal of that is going to be 3/2. If I have negative 4/7, the reciprocal is going to be negative 7 over 4. If I have the so what's the multiplicative inverse of negative 8? Meaning what's its reciprocal? And the answer is going to be negative 1/8. Because negative 8 times negative 1 over 8 equals positive 1. Multiplicative inverse of 1/3 is 3, because 3 times 1/3 equals 1. When we divide by a fraction, we take the reciprocal of the second term and multiply. So, if I have the problem 5/6 divided by 7/12, to solve this, I'm going to take the second term, 7/12, and I'm going to take the reciprocal of it and multiply. So 5/6 will stay the same. I change it to multiply, and then I'm going to take the reciprocal of 7/12, and that is 12 over 7. So I have 5/6 times 12/7. And if you remember, sorry, I had to pause the slide because the student was at the door. So let me start over. So since I took the reciprocal of 7/12 and got 12/7, now I'm multiplying. And if you remember from previous classes, that when you're multiplying fractions, you can cross reduce. So 6 and 12, since they have a common factor, I can reduce that. The common factor is 6. So this becomes 1, and this becomes 2. And it makes multiplying fractions much easier. So I use 5 times 2, which is 10. 1 times 7 is 7. So 10/7 or 1 3/7 is your answer. Alright, you try these two on your own. So I have 4/13 divided by 2/7. 4/13 stays the same. I change it to multiplication, and I multiply by the reciprocal, 7 over 2. And I cross reduce. This becomes 2. This becomes 1. And I get 2 times 7, which is 14 over 13, which equals 1 over 13. Then I have mixed numbers. Now, when you're dividing mixed numbers, you have to change them to improper fractions before doing this. So you take the whole number, multiply it by the denominator, and then you add the numerator. So 5 times 3 is 15, plus 2 is 17. So I write that as 17 over 3. Then divided by negative 2 times 8 Well, don't worry about the negative. All I want you to do is worry about the 2. So 2 times 8 is 16, plus 1 is 17. So it becomes negative 17 over 8. When you have a negative mixed number, change it to an improper fraction, just like you would, and then put the negative sign at the end of it. So 2 times 8 is 16, plus 1 is 17. Then we make it negative. So now I have 17 thirds divided by negative 17 over 8. Take the reciprocal, 17 thirds times 8 over negative 17. Cross reduce, 1 and negative 1. And I get negative 8 thirds, or negative 2 and 2 thirds. All right, and that's the end of this lesson. So I hope it was helpful. And don't forget to complete the quiz. All right, bye.